Howdy, my name is Nonat, and no, I'm sorry, this is still not the Kineticist deep dive that I know you're all thirsty for. I know you all want to be able to throw on that 2-hour-long video and just absorb my words, but that's gonna take a while, and I want to give it the respect it deserves. I want to do some fun stuff with it, I've got some cool plans, and for that reason, it's gonna be coming out a little bit later. I know y'all are gonna have the Kineticist in your hands in just a few days, at least if you're a Paizo PDF subscriber, but I'm sorry, I want to make sure the video is good. I feel like I've hit a point in this channel lately where I just kind of throw things out there and be like, I talked about it, that's enough. But I want to get back to doing some fun stuff with the channel, so keep your eyes open for that. But I am a generous god, and I didn't want to leave y'all hanging. You know, there's two new aspects to the Kineticist that were not available in the playtest, and those are the two new elements available to the class: wood and metal. So I thought it'd be fun to give y'all a little sneak peek, a little taste of the level 1 impulse options for metal and wood. As a reminder, if you're creating a Kineticist, you always get to start with 2 first level impulse feats, which are basically your spells that aren't spells. So let's take a look at these. I haven't read them myself, you're going to be getting my first impressions, and let's see what the wood and metal elements have going for them, starting with metal. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, do leave a like and subscribe to the channel, it helps me out a lot. I think you're going to be really happy with what's coming in the future of the channel. The first impulse is Flash Forge, which is really kind of prestidigitation on steroids. For 2 actions, as long as you are channeling your metal, you create a small metal object. And this isn't just like a useless small metal ball or something. This can be any level 0 common weapon, piece of adventuring gear, handheld item. It can even be magnetic. It says you can make a compass with this, which is super freaking cool. It's also only 2 actions. Oh no, your fighter got disarmed and lost his greatsword? Flash Forge, now he has a new greatsword. Actually, that's not true. It's 1 bulk or less, so short sword or long sword. You can even make a perfectly balanced scale. I think you could get so creative with Flash Forge, and those are my favorite kinds of feats. The ones that have their clear, obvious, easy in-combat usage, and then some additional usage outside in roleplay. Oh, we need to make sure these weigh the same. Here, have a scale. Now it's balanced. This has a lot more use than you might think as well, because if you are playing into resistances and weaknesses, say you have a ranger who dual wields hammers, but you're fighting something that resists bludgeoning, but maybe it's weak to slashing. Flash Forge, give them a dagger, give them a short sword, give them a slashing weapon. Sure, it's not going to be enchanted, but if all their damage is being resisted by 5 anyway, this is going to be great, especially at level 1. Sure, it might fall off later in the late game when you can summon anything you want, but for level 1, this is awesome. It does say every time it is used, it has a 20% chance to break though, so keep that in mind if you're making a weapon. Magnetic Pinions is our first overflow impulse, which, as a reminder, expends your channeled energy, meaning on your next turn, you're going to need to re-channel it. So while this costs 3 actions, it actually costs a little bit more if you want to use it again. Wait, what? For 3 actions, you make an attack roll against 3 different targets that are within 60 feet of you, and if they're wearing or made of metal, you get +1 to your attack roll. Also, all 3 of these attacks are at your full attack bonus. And they deal 2d4 damage. What? And this scales by 2d4 every 2 character levels? What? At level 3, this is dealing 4d4 to 3 that's dealing 12d4 at level 3! Granted, again, it's overflow. At most, you can use this every other turn, but holy cow! This is like Whirlwind Strike at level 1, and I love it! Level 5, this is dealing 6d4. This stays good the whole game! Level 19, it's dealing what? Level 19, this is dealing 20d4 damage to 3 targets. That's 60d4. That's incredible. You could get a crit for 120 D4 damage! What a cool freaking level 1 feat. Just right off the bat, giving your character this explosion of metal attacks. That's amazing. Metal Carapace is interesting. For one action, you give yourself medium armor. It's got +3 armor class, +2 dex cap, some speed penalty, 14 strength requirement, etc., which that's a little bit rough, but I guess this is made for your melee kineticist who's gonna have a strength score anyway. Additionally, any runes you have on your normal armor that can apply to the new metal armor do. So I assume if you have something like Glamored, then you can also glamour your Metal Carapace. And it does say any that could apply, so I assume that accounts for your bonus to armor class and bonus to saving throws. You can also give yourself a shield for one action. So for one action, remember, the Kineticist can only wear light armor. But with this, it gives you medium armor with your light armor proficiency. And if you're a melee kineticist, you're dumping dexterity. You need to pump up, at least if you're min-maxing, you need to pump up your constitution and strength to get the most out of those melee kinetic blasts. So you're not going to have a high dex, so you're going to want this metal medium armor. But on top of that, you can get a shield and armor all for the same action. Even if you don't have... You can shield block even if you don't have the feat with this thing. What? That's insane, and it scales up. You don't even need to get better shields because your shield goes up every 3 character levels. It doesn't go up by a ton. Its hardness only goes up by 1 every few levels. But that's still insane. This feat feels amazing for melee kineticists. Makes dexterity even less of a requirement, gives you that increased armor class, gives you a shield and the ability to reduce damage on a class that doesn't really have any inherent reactions anyway, so getting a free shield, this is one of the best feats in the game. I'm gonna say right now, this is one of the best level 1 feats in the entire game, and it's given to a class that gets 2 level 1 feats at the start of the game. Granted, it's only for metal kineticists, and it's only really useful for melee metal kineticists, but for that build specifically, this is insane. Shard Strike. For 2 actions, you choose shards or spines, and they each have a slightly different function. This is basically a metallic breath weapon. If you choose shards, you deal 1d6 slashing damage in a 15-foot cone. If you choose spines, you deal 1d6 piercing damage in a 30-foot line. However, they do all have a different critical effect. This is a reflex save against your class DC, and if they critically fail against your shards, they take 1d6 persistent bleed damage, and if they critically fail against your spines, they're clumsy 1 until the start of your next turn, which isn't super useful for you. Well, I guess it could be. This is only 2 actions. So if you are in melee and you can make them critically fail on your... Wait, hold on a second. Sorry, my ADHD just kicked in and I realized how broken this is. This does not have an interact trait. This doesn't have a manipulate trait. This will not trigger attacks of opportunity in melee. So if you're in melee, you hit them with your spines first for 2 actions. They critically fail their reflex save. Suddenly, they take 2d6 piercing damage and they're clumsy 1, reducing their armor class by 1, which you follow up with a melee elemental blast on their now reduced armor class for full attack bonus because that was a reflex save, not an attack roll. Yo, metal kineticists are cracked. Okay, yeah, and I just double checked. It is a basic reflex save, so they do take double damage on a crit fail. They still take half damage on a normal fail. You've basically enabled the ability to create a melee martial-esque character who can use a saving throw attack and then a normal attack on the same turn, which to my knowledge hasn't really existed yet. The most we've seen is like someone who can use electric arc and then a ranged attack on like a bard. But this is crazy good. So there's your level 1 metal impulses. It feels like if you're looking to make a melee kineticist, metal might be the way to go because those feel amazing. Better action economy, better protection, better damage. Oh my god, that's good stuff. But let's see if wood holds up as well, starting with fresh produce. Sorry, I just read it as I was doing this take and I was not ready. to go from shards of metal impale your foes to here, have an apple, you look hungry. For one action, you grow a food. It could be a nut, it could be a fruit, it could be a seed, it could be a nice piece of asparagus. You choose a creature within your aura and the produce grows in their open hand, or it grows at their feet if they have no hands free. If someone eats it, they heal 1d4 plus 1 and they feel full for 10 minutes, during which they gain resistance 2 to void damage. If you're not aware, void is the new evil damage, I believe. That's freaking hilarious. You have given someone a piece of broccoli that heals their broken finger and makes them protected from evil. I love this class. Wait, the healing goes up by 1d4 plus 5 every 2 character levels? So at level 3, this is healing for 2d4 plus 6? At level 5, this is healing for 3d4 plus 11? This gets incredible. That scales amazing. If you're level 9, that's 5d4 plus what? 21 or 26? And you can do this every 10 minutes to all of your allies. Wow, they've made a healing kineticist. Now granted, it is not super action economical. It is one action, although while someone does need to spend an action on their turn to eat it, it sort of splits the 2 actions of a heal between 2 characters. Remember that this is not overflow. If your allies are all standing next to you, you can spend 3 actions to give 3 different allies a piece of fresh produce. If you're level 3, that is 3 actions to heal for a total of 6d4 plus 18. 3 actions, 6d4 plus 18. Like, let's average this. 2d4 on average is gonna be about 4 points of healing plus 6. That is 30 points of healing on average for 3 actions you can do every 10 minutes. That's amazing. And of course you can heal and you can harm. 2 action, Hail of Splinters. Notably, this is a 2 action overflow. And remember, channeling your element is only 1 action, so this overflow could technically be used every single turn. 1 action channel, 2 action overflow. Next turn, 1 action channel, 2 action overflow. For 2 actions, you deal 1d4 piercing and 1d4 persistent bleed to all creatures in a 30-foot cone on a basic reflex save. So clearly, this is a lot weaker than the 3 action metal overflow. You know, metal overflow is 3 different attacks for a d6 on all 3 targets, I think. Whereas this is, I mean, 2d4 isn't bad, and the guaranteed persistent bleed is pretty good. And the size is enormous. A 30-foot cone is huge. I feel like people underrate how big and wide cones get when they get longer, because it's exponential. The longer your cone gets, the wider it gets by a wide margin. So the fact that there's no saving throw on the persistent bleed is nuts. Even if they succeed their reflex save, they're taking half persistent bleed damage. That might just be 1, but that adds up every turn. And even if they remove it, you could just do it again. You can just keep up persistent bleed damage. Technically, unless they critically succeed one of their reflex saves, you can permanently give something persistent bleed damage. That's gross. I love this. And it's AoE, you know, even if they do normally succeed the reflex save and they're only taking, on average, 1 piercing, 1 bleed, so 2 damage per target, if you hit 5 targets with this, it's a 30-foot cone, that's not that hard to do. If you hit 5 targets, that's still 10 damage per turn at level 1 on successful reflex saves. And eventually, they're gonna roll a 1. That's awesome. Hardwood armor looks to be pretty much the exact same as the metal armor one. I guess just so you don't have to feel locked into metal if you want to be a melee kineticist. It even gives you the shield with shield block, although it's worth noting this is a wooden shield, which is weaker than a steel shield. So even though the armor stats are the same, the shield is a little bit weaker on the wooden one than the steel one, which just makes sense. It's cool that we're getting multiple options that, you know, even if it's not as good as the metal one, maybe you really want to play that wood, fire, melee kineticist. Well, you still can. You don't have to take metal. Sure, you might be penalized a little bit because wood is not as strong as metal, but I think that makes sense, and it allows you to fulfill a similar mechanical fantasy while also fulfilling your specific elemental fantasy, and I love that. Elemental fantasy sounds like a romance novel that I would read. And the final level 1 wood impulse is Timber Sentinel. For 2 actions, you summon a tree within 30 feet of you as a protector tree, which is a spell that I don't know what it does, but I'll tell you what it does in just a second. Oh! So protector tree is a tree with 10 hit points. It is summoned, wherever you put it. If an ally is adjacent to the tree and takes a hit, the tree interjects the attack and takes all the damage first. And only once the tree runs out of hit points do your allies start taking damage. So this thing has 10 hit points at level 1. So for 2 actions, you're basically giving everybody next to that tree a shared pool of 10 temporary hit points. And you can just keep doing this. It's not even overflow. Wow. So as it should be, wood element seems to be very protection focused. It's got the heal, it's got the temporary hit points, it's got, your own armor and shield. This is crazy. At level 1, 10 points of temporary hit points every single round on an infinite resource. As long as you don't overflow, you can do this in a blast every turn. 10 temporary hit points, blast. 10 temporary hit points, blast. The only stipulation is your allies need to stay next to the tree, but guess what? You're the one who puts the tree down. You can just put it next to your ally, who's hopefully already next to an enemy, and as long as the enemy, even if they attack the tree, they're wasting an attack on the tree. Another thing is, if they do more than 10 damage, the damage does go through the tree and your ally takes the rest, but this is basically shield blocking for your whole team. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. This is like a better champion's reaction that you can use on your turn instead of needing a reaction. And you don't even need to be in position. You put the tree there. How does the tree scale? It scales just like the spell, equal to half your level rounded up. So once you're level 3, the tree has 20 hit points. Once you're level 5, the tree has 30 hit points. Every single turn, 30 temporary hit points, 30 temporary hit points, 30 temporary hit points. That's insane. And it's not even a melee strike. Even if they get hit by a ranged attack with a longbow, the tree still takes the damage for them. The only thing the tree can't block is spell attacks and spell reflex saves and stuff. That's incredible. Like, that's a spell slot spell, right? That's a first level primal spell that takes a spell slot. And the Kineticist, as long as they're channeling, can just Sentinel, 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 Sentinel. You can't hurt us. That's crazy. Throw a champion into the mix who can reduce the damage of the attack. That's incredible. So yeah, wood and metal have got some really cool stuff going on. If you want to go just balls to the wall damage melee Kineticist, check out metal. If you want to go more protector support Kineticist, you really want to check out wood, which fills those ideas perfectly. When I think metal and wood, I really do think that metal is the one that draws blood, wood is the one that protects and preserves in nature and in the world. So Paizo, I think you've done a bang up job with these, and I'm not looking forward to having to review all of these feats, because this took me 23 minutes to review 6 feats. Pray for me.